Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Kustas, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hello. Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Kustas, and I am so glad you're here today. This is a space where we have real conversations about growth, identity, and what it looks like to live in alignment with intention wherever you are on that journey. So today's conversation is one that I have truly been looking forward to because I spend so much time in community with women. So I'm in the conversations and in the coaching in real life, and I hear certain questions come up again and again. So these questions look like, why do I feel stretched even when I'm doing the inner work? Why can growth sometimes feel heavier than I expected? These are the types of questions that are always coming up. And I love having them. I love having the conversations, but I am so grateful to have Debbie here with us today because this is a space where she brings so much wisdom. So with that, I'm going to officially introduce you to our powerhouse today. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Noelle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just honored to be a part of your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, I feel the same. And I know before we hopped on, we were geeking out from when we met the first time and how far we've come in this journey. But I do want to just let our audience know that you are the founder of the Lit Up Life. And this is where she supports purpose-driven women in reconnecting with who they are, bringing forward their brilliance and building lives and businesses that feel both meaningful and sustainable. With more than 25 years of experience spanning corporate leadership, entrepreneurship, neuroscience, and transformational coaching, Debbie brings a whole person approach to her work. And this is where she helps women understand their patterns, their values, inner drivers so they can move forward with greater clarity and intention. And then what's very cool is she also teaches leadership at Gonzaga University. And this is where she's guiding students there in those value-based leadership, self-awareness, and conscious decision making. So Debbie, again, it's so good to have you here. And I would love to just dive in and start
Sure.
with what originally drew you to this work and how did your path unfold into what you're doing today?
Yeah, Noelle, thank you for asking that question because my marketing person is always like, tell your story, go backwards and look at like the decades in your life. And I did that, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And what's interesting to me is I started out as an entrepreneur. So I played
Mm,
the piano competitively in high school all across the US. And
okay.
so my first job was teaching piano lessons. And so I was an entrepreneur. And so it led to that. And, I'm a faith-based person too. And I talk in universe, but for me, it's God. But
Hmm.
I feel like God's always had a hand in what I was doing. I got an education degree and I didn't really know why. I didn't want to teach. I interviewed in the education system. I went on to sell yellow pages
Yeah.
and which I'm aging myself just a little bit because there's maybe some listeners that don't know what yellow pages are. So chat GPT that and it'll tell you. But ultimately at that time, one of my managers said to me, Debbie, you're not selling yellow pages. You're helping business owners with their hopes, wishes, and dreams. Because the
Mm,
more clients or customers that come in because they were using the yellow pages before you could search Google, then the more money that brought them, then the more they were able to have financial freedom and do the things that they wanted to do. So
mm.
fast forward, and I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just doing it in a different way. And I do work with men too, but most of my programs are female like focused. Although I've had men recently say, "Do you ever do co-ed stuff?" So maybe that's in the future, right?
Yeah.
But I help men and women really, like as you said in the intro, figure out who they are because we have to know who we are. And we've been taught, particularly women, to not say that. I go back to one of my favorite movies, the original one I think is the best, but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory
Mm.
where I love that one, right? Where
Yes,
the
the
one
original.
girl, yeah, exactly. And I should look up her like name because I never remember what her name is, but she's the girl that knew exactly what she wanted And she
Mm.
said, I want the golden egg, right? And what was she
Yeah.
portrayed? She was portrayed as being a brat, as being demanding, like all of these things. So we are inundated with messages from very early on that it's not okay to say what you want. And if you do, you're considered to be someone that's forceful or, the bad word that people say, witchy, like it's
Yeah.
just something that's not considered okay. Now that's shifting in
Hmm.
our social realms. But even like I had a love-hate relationship with Disney for a long time because until the new Cinderella came out, because it was, oh, find your Prince Charming, right? Or Pretty Woman, Richard Gere pulling up in a white limousine, right? Like that we need to be saved and we don't need to
Mm.
be saved. Now, the beautiful thing is when you get into relationship and you choose that relationship, which I was listening to the podcast that you did with your husband recently, right? Like when you choose that relationship, that has a very different energetic quantum physics tone to it, right?
Totally.
And so I really jump in and help people uncover where they're aware, uncover where these messages have come into their subconscious brain, because we can't deflect messages that come into our subconscious brain, hence why we dream. And
Mm-hmm.
so these messages come from all over the place, right? They come
Yeah.
from religion. And I mean, I'm a faith-based person. They come from schools, they come from entertainment and media,
Mm-hmm.
all over the place. And so I really help people unwind that because
Yeah.
in order to go do the thing, which is more the masculine energy, the
Mm-hmm.
structure, creating the business, doing the thing, we have to be able to know what beliefs we hold and whether or not they're serving us or not. Like I tell a story about when I started my business, I did it as a part-time gig. I was a CFO for a small business here when I moved to Idaho. And I couldn't figure out why I was so afraid to step in. Well, a
Mm-hmm.
couple of things, right? I realized I had a double bind, meaning that I wanted to go about and have this business be what I did, but I wanted security more. I wanted the W-2 job where I knew I was getting a paycheck every 2 weeks. And as you know,
Yeah.
pay is different when you're an entrepreneur and you
Totally.
manage your money differently, right? But at the
Right.
time that message was there. Then I
Mm-hmm.
also had a loyalty pact because my mom passed away of breast cancer, actually at the same age I am today.
Mm.
And she just knew that part of it was the stress of owning her own business. So the loyalty pact I had is then if I stepped in and I did really well in my business, I was making her wrong. Because our
Mm.
brain, this whole
Wow.
neuroscience, the brain is so magnificent, but it also is just insidious sometimes, these messages, how they come in. And
Yeah.
so that's really what I help people do is uncover what the untruth is. Because
Yeah.
anywhere there's chaos or confusion, there's an untruth. And we just have to figure
So
out what
true.
that is.
Yeah, so true. I love that. So many things you said there. I was going, oh my gosh, that's such a great nugget. And it's so true. I mean, going back to even what you were saying about the girl and how she was portrayed
Yeah.
of being the brat, being the
Yeah.
one, and yes, like you said, it has started to shift a little bit for sure. But I think that internally that's still in there. And I think subconsciously depending on how we grew up, and especially if we had the moms that were maybe the stay-at-home moms, or they're
Yeah.
the moms that were going to work every day and coming home, maybe not in that entrepreneurship. It's different. I know my grandmother is 94, and my mom she's 72. So different generations, but they oftentimes will come to me and say, I don't know how you do what you do. I don't know how you show up the way that you show up. And who made you like this? Like this,
Yeah,
and
because
I
it was
just,
unsafe for them.
yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's that safety in that they go, this feels so scary to me. It
Yeah.
is.
And
So
honestly, Noelle, I'm glad you brought that up because I talk to clients about we all have money stories, scarcity
mm,
stories. Because if you think about it, if you had grandparents, you said your grandmother, I think, was 94, right?
94. Yeah.
She lived through the Great Depression.
Yeah.
She lived through the Dust Bowl,
Yep.
right? And so that is a very real thing about scarcity. If you
Mm,
had grandparents or parents that grew up in Europe through World War II, right?
right.
Then you have the whole Vietnam War. Like you have cultural things that happen because of the age and when you grew up, right? And
Hmm.
so I think it's really important to understand that so that then as you're trying to work through your own messages, you can uncover, because I no, Noelle, be honest with me. You're probably like me. Our families, all of us, my aunts, my mom, my sisters, and I, we would all get together, cousins, and
Mhm.
we would say, where do you want to go eat for lunch?
I
You know where
already
I'm
know where
going,
this is going.
right? Yeah. And what does everyone say?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't care. Where do
I
you
don't
want to
care. It
go?
doesn't matter. What do you think? We're
Right.
all indecisive.
And where my ancestors come from in a small town in southeast Kansas, there's only a few choices. We always
Mm,
ended up at the Mexican restaurant. So
mm.
my one aunt and my youngest sister would always say, "Well, let's go for Mexican." And then everybody's like, "Well, who does she think she is?" Right? Like we always have to go where she wants to go. Well, there's three choices,
Yeah.
right? But the point is we spend an hour deciding where we're going to go, and then we get mad when somebody says, because we are mad at ourselves for not speaking up and saying where we wanted to go. And
So
that's just a
good. So true.
cultural thing that you
Yeah.
learn, right?
Hmm.
And when you start to shift your energy and the rules that you live by, it takes people a little bit of time to get used to that. Right.
Yeah.
So I will say to people, you know what, Noelle, I'm going to trust that if you need something from me, you're going to ask. Because otherwise, what do? I'm like, are you okay? Do you need something?
Yeah.
Like overly, my son does this like really good helicopter version, this noise, right? Like, okay, you're helicoptering, stop it. But
Yeah.
it's just the way we were brought up.
No, and it's so true. And as a matter of fact, I know you mentioned that you listened to a little bit of the podcast that just came out with my husband. And, we've been together for 10 years. And I'll never forget when we first, had gotten married and moved in with each other and we're going through that whole transition. I remember I would get quiet. I was very passive. I was very passive. I didn't even realize it. And my husband finally, after doing that, he would go, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." And really on the inside, I'm going, "No, I'm not fine. Like, can't you tell?" And I remember sitting on the couch one time and he said to me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes," but I was obviously not okay at all. And I think he had finally just had it because he knew something was up, but he was not going to keep digging. And I think I made some flippant comment and said something like, "Do you realize that I'm not really fine?" or something like that. And he said, "I realize that you probably aren't. However, I've asked you, and your expectation is that I'm supposed to read your mind. And in a relationship, we're together. I love you. You love me. I trust that you're going to tell me when something's wrong, and I'm not going to beg you for it. And so if you say everything's fine, we're going to keep moving on." And I was like, "What?" I mean, I had never been confronted with that in my life, but it was such a huge reflection on me. And it has stood out in our relationship ever since that I thought, if something is bothering me, I have the responsibility
Yeah.
to make that known. And that was really hard. And I feel like when I talk to women, that is such a hard thing for women to do, is to really say something, to really
Yeah.
share what it is, because we do the same thing with the restaurant, or we used to, not so much anymore. But he'll say, "Okay, well, let's go to Mexican food." And I'll say, "Well, wait, that doesn't sound good." And he goes, "You said you didn't care before." It just
Yeah.
goes round and round.
Yeah. And that's,
So,
I think it's so important for people to understand the brain science behind it. And that's why
mm,
I talk about that in some generational things, because otherwise we start to shame and guilt ourselves and then we lower our vibration.
yeah.
And then we attract what we vibrate. And so then we're attracting lower vibrational things. And then we put evidence in our evidence bank to say, oh, yeah, see, this is just how it happens. Right. And
Hmm.
we can go down that rabbit hole versus realizing, oh, there's a message here. Huh. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Let's get curious about that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. And I love even talking about, because that is something I have just been diving into and really leaning into. We've been talking about it a lot on the podcast recently. It's just how we are operating in our frequencies and what we are putting out there, and helping women to understand that. Again, I feel like, this is scientific. This has, been forever a thing, but it's just now I feel like women are starting to hear this. Because when I say things like this, there are so many women still that go, what are you talking about? What does that even mean? And so I'm so glad that you brought that up because it is such a truth that I am realizing in such a big way and maybe didn't have the words around it a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, but now I'm able to define that and go, oh, that's why. Yeah. So,
Yeah, and Noelle, it's interesting because I work a lot in universal law,
hmm,
and universal law, sometimes what I found is faith-based people that I know get really nervous about that. And I'm
yeah,
like, if you look in the Bible, like it is biblical, like it is
totally.
everywhere. And
Totally.
it's just, they don't come out and say it's the universal law of, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really interesting to me, like as you say that too, these messages and the fear versus being curious about
Yeah.
it and being just open to hearing a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd love to get into because now, like I said, I know you have so much insight and I just love I know I could be here for hours and I have a feeling that this might lead to a part two at some point.
Okay,
Um
I'm game.
because we're just getting started and I'm going, "Oh my gosh, I have so many questions for you." But one of the things, just because I know the work that you do
Yeah.
and I feel like it is something that comes up in my world. So I
Yeah.
know it comes up, and I would just love your perspective around it or your insight on this is that I feel like there's so many women that are tapping into personal growth
Mhm.
and really wanting, to live their best life, to become their favorite selves, all of the things. And I'm just curious, why do you think that even in the work, they've done the personal growth or they're in that journey, they're still feeling so exhausted underneath all of that.
Yeah. So I have two things. Fear takes a whole lot more energy than excitement,
Mm,
and fear and excitement feel the same way in your body.
hmm.
So when I say feel something, I'm asking, where do you feel it in your physical body? Emotion is different than feeling, right?
Yeah,
But we tend to use the word feeling for emotions as well.
right.
Emotions are just a label that we put on something to interpret how we're feeling in our body.
Hmm.
And so a lot of it is because we're coming from fear, right?
So
And
good.
when you think about fear and excitement, I'll pick excitement any time of the day. But if
Yeah.
you think about, Noelle, when was the last time you were afraid, right? Like you were nervous about something that you were getting ready to maybe do, even when like I don't remember how many podcast episodes you have out. It's up there, but like when
Yeah.
you first started your podcast, like you think about those things, you got nervous, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
where do you feel that in your body?
Yeah. See, for me, I feel that in my gut. I
Yeah.
feel totally. I
Yeah,
get the
yeah. Like in
nervous,
the
like those like stingy butterfly. I always say that's when I know my cortisol is probably shooting out of control.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now I want you to think about the last time you felt super excited about something
Yeah,
and where did you feel it?
totally in the same place.
Absolutely. So what happens is our brain, its job is to protect and predict, right? So
Yeah.
what's happening is it's trying to protect you. So it's saying, no, don't step forward, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. When in
Hmm.
fact, it's the same feeling in your body, and your brain has the choice to say, no, I'm excited about this.
Mm.
Right. So one
So
of the
good.
things that I do is I push myself. Like I have a fear of heights. I jumped out of an airplane. I go to this hike where I have to step over this like graded bridge thing, right? Just to like remind my brain I'm safe. I'm safe. Because that's really the big piece is safety. And
Yeah.
it takes so much more energy. Then I lied. I have three things. Part of the exhaustion also is sometimes we're leveling up and energetically we're leveling up, but our nervous system hasn't caught up. Our belief system hasn't caught up. So when you're in this dichotomy of tension, where you know what you want, goes back to what I was talking about earlier, even in my example, when you know what you want, but there's something holding you back and you can't figure out what that's holding you back, that's
Right.
exhausting
Yeah.
because you're fighting it, right?
Yeah.
The other piece that I see women do a lot, and I'm like uber sensitive to this verbiage, and you're going to giggle because we were talking about this before we got on the podcast, even, is growing up in the church, I heard over and over again people pouring out into other people.
Mm.
And when you're a vase or a pitcher and you have this unending supply of energy coming from universe, God, source, whatever it is for you, and you pour out into others, you cut off the supply. So what happens is many times you're saying yes to something you really don't want to say yes to, which then leads to resentment, and you empty that vase versus knowing who you are, what you're available for, what you're not available for, And we women love to say way too much. So if somebody comes up to me and says, Debbie, we want you to join the PTA and be the PTA president, I'd be like, you know what? Thank you so much, but it just doesn't work for me right now. I don't have to say why, because then everybody gets into judgment as well. Her excuses aren't as good as what I think they should be, versus standing tall and getting all of that energy, taking care of yourself. Now we poke holes in our vase, right? And that energy seeps out. But when you stand tall, then people get your overflow.
Yeah, that's so good.
And it feels very different. And Noelle, the last little caveat I want to put here too is right
Mhm.
now, I'm not talking politics at all, but what I'm talking about is across the world, there
Yeah.
is a lot of fear. And so we are all collectively connected. So things that you used to do, massages, walks in the woods, quiet evenings at home with your spouse, whatever fills your bucket, your spiritual and energetic bucket,
Yep.
right now is only bringing people back to neutral. So those things that used to fill your vase are now just bringing you back to neutral because the collective is also like taking from that energetic space that you have. So there are
Mm.
things that I do. I'm in touch with what's happening in the world, but I don't watch the news.
Hmm.
I don't read the newspaper. Like I have sources that I go out and check, right? That I
Yeah.
do my sourcing on what's happening in the world, but I try to stay away from that influence of messages coming into my subconscious brain to be afraid.
I so love that you are sharing this. This is what I love about organic conversations
Yeah.
because I go, I never know where these conversations are going to go. And this is like completely taking me into a different direction, but in such a good way because I go, this is so relevant right now. And not even talking about politics, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you add that into the game, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But realistically, I love that you said that because that is something that we hear all the time. You have to fill your cup so you can pour out.
Yeah.
And so hearing that perspective definitely shifts just even my thought process a little bit today. And I also would love to touch on even a little bit more
Sure.
about the nervous system and how you said, you are practicing because again, this is what I've been talking about even in our community is that same thing before I remember as a teacher, and this was, I've been out of teaching for about 3.5 years now, but let's just say 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that was how I found relief was a spa day with my girlfriends,
Yeah.
being able to, go on a weekend and just be able to go have a hike and go for coffee and I would feel literally so much different. I would feel like, okay, I'm thriving now. I've had that time. Now it is so temporary. I feel good in the moment, but then I'm right back to real life. I'm right back into the grind. And then, and now I'm realizing just from what you said. So let's tap into the nervous system because I think that is so important to just share what your insight is with that and then helping women to be able to understand because we're hearing that too as a lot, there's a lot of buzz around regulating your nervous system.
Mm.
What does that mean in your world? What does that mean when you're working with women?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think the biggest piece is that awareness that fear and excitement feel the same way.
Yeah, so good.
And a couple of hacks that I use pretty regularly is I do a body scan, right? Like I'll go through and do a quick body scan. And what that means for people that don't know what that is, you're shaking your head, so I'm assuming you kind of know what
Yes,
it is.
no, I,
But like the
yeah.
body scan is I start either at my toes or my head, whatever I'm feeling, right? And I kind of just go, okay, I close my eyes and I'm like, okay, what am I feeling? Oh, I feel some tension behind my eyes right now. And okay, yeah, my neck is feeling a little stiff. And I kind of just go through that. And then I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And I love Louise Hay. So
Mm,
I go out to her book that's called You Can Heal Your Life. And she would say, your neck is you don't want to see another perspective, right? Like you're stiff. So then I start to go down the hole. And I know enough now that I just do this without necessarily always looking it up. And then I'll be like, okay, that's interesting. What is happening in my life that maybe I need to broaden my perspective? And it's so interesting because when you clue into that, the tension like kind of immediately goes away. The other thing is breathe.
yeah. Why do we forget to breathe?
And
For
Noelle, I mean,
real.
I'm just as guilty, right? Like
Yeah.
I was talking to someone on the phone. I was on a road trip and I was coming back and I'm like, dang, I'm kind of lightheaded. And I'm like, I don't know when the last time I took a breath was, right? Like
Yeah.
we're just in the conversation and It's taking a moment and not just breathing like through your shoulders, but like really
Right.
doing that gut breath kind of thing. I also do nature walks where I just go out for like 20 minutes. I don't take anything to drink with me and I just walk through nature and just kind of am open to what's coming. And it's really about that place that you can get your cortisol level to lower. And sometimes you need some help with that, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes medically we have to go get some
Yeah.
supplements or something too to help with that,
Right.
particularly as you get older and have some menopausal kind of hormone things.
Yeah.
When you regulate your nervous system, it also means having boundaries, meaning you were talking about doing a spa day with your friends. So
Right.
this last week, I was super excited. Friday night, I went to a cover band for Fleetwood Mac. I love him. I've seen him numerous times. Went with some girlfriends. And two-thirds of the way through, I was just like, I've hit a wall. I'm done.
Mhm.
Normally, I would have just stood there and my feet killing me because I was in new boots, of course, right? Like, and like I would have just gone through the motions. And I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm going to leave. So I said to them all, hey, I would love to stick around. I'm sad I'm not going to see the rest of the show, but I need to go. So I left.
Mhm.
They didn't think anything of it. The next morning, I had a Galentine's event for a bunch of women that I knew, right? I had seven of us were at my house for brunch. So I had like the crystal and the china and everything. And then after that was done, I was like, I'm kind of done for the day. Well, then Monday night, I went out to dinner with a few of those same people. We laughed and had the best time Saturday. But then
Mhm.
this morning, I woke up and I thought, I feel a little drained. And so the things that also give me energy, I have to look at. And I was feeling a little tired before I went last night. And I thought maybe I should just bail on this. And I
Mhm.
decided not to, but I should have, in a way, right? I don't live on the should haves. But if I would have listened to my intuition, it was
Yeah.
saying you've had enough interaction. Now kind of go refill your cup. And
Mhm.
particularly because for me, I go downhill skiing and we haven't had much snow, although we just got 2 feet in the mountains in the last 2 days. So I'm
I
going to be
know we
skiing
just have
finally.
snow on the mountains. We're so excited.
I know. And so that's a filler of my cup, right? But
Yeah.
so it's also noticing that the things that used to fill your cup, sometimes too much of it can actually start to drain it.
I love that. And I want women to hear that you have permission
Yeah.
to have boundaries. I loved that you said so. A couple things and thoughts that I have on that. When you were at the concert and you said, I'm kind of done.
Yeah.
Why is it that sometimes we feel like we can't say that?
Because I want the golden egg. I want the golden egg.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I go, you guys, we have permission to say, and even going back to what you had said earlier, when you're asked to do something and
Mhm.
you're allowed to say, no, that's just not the right timing for me without an explanation.
Yeah. We don't have to justify.
We don't have to justify. I was just speaking to National Charity League, a bunch of moms who are, of course, the overdoers, the over yesers. I
Yeah.
was one of them for many, many years. And it was hilarious because we talked about self love and how not losing ourselves
Yeah.
in the self love, but also not losing ourselves in living in the frequency of love. I'm like, you have to. You have to pay attention to you as
Yeah.
well. And by the time the meeting was done and they were asking for help for a very early morning shift for a bike race or something, all the women are like, can we apply what Noelle was just talking about? I say no. This is our boundary here. Oh, my hand just went up. But I just giggled because I thought they're not used to that. They're
Yeah.
not used to being able to not even give an explanation, but to just say, it just doesn't align right now.
Well, no, well, that even works like if you're working in corporate America or you have a W-2 job, right? Like I've
Yeah.
seen so many women go in and say, I need to take 2 weeks vacation because I need to take care of my mother-in-law and she's sick and blah, blah, blah. I need to take 2 weeks vacation.
Uh-huh.
That's all you have, like
Right.
that's all you have to say. But we're
Yeah.
so used to having to justify, and it goes back to, in the 40s and 50s, it wasn't okay to do something out of the norm
Right.
of what was there. And that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, our parents and grandparents did the best they could with what they knew, right? And now
Hmm.
it's our job to like continue to grow and develop. And so even when you talk about exhaustion, sometimes it's that dichotomy of tension with how we were brought up. It's like what we're trying to do is a little different than what we're used to. And we
Hmm.
ultimately, from the very beginning of life, when you got kicked out of the tribe, you died.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So there is
Right.
this innate part of us that wants to protect and not be kicked out of the tribe. So therefore, we don't want to do anything to rock the boat with whatever tribe we're a part of
Hmm.
because we might be cast away, right? Like I think what's that show where they get voted off the island or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Survivor, right?
Survivor.
Like, yeah,
Survivor. Yeah.
we got to survive. So we go into
Yeah.
protection mode, which then increases your cortisol versus
Mm-hmm.
knowing who you are. And when you know who you are, and it's a constant evolution,
You're
but
right.
knowing who you are then gives you that empowerment to be able to say, I just had that. I was just reaching out to a client because my calendar, those of you that do this, they can sign up for times to meet with you. And I have a
Yeah.
workshop and then another workshop. And I just didn't block out the time in my calendar to like have
Mhm.
some space in between. I'm like, oh, that's tomorrow. So I reached out. I can't do that day. I didn't say why. I just said,
Yeah.
I can't, we need to find another time. So we're in the process of finding another time. But other people sometimes react differently too, Noelle, because they're not used
That's
to that.
true. That's true. You're
And so we
absolutely
have to
right,
have
especially
some
women.
grace. Absolutely. So we have to have some grace for that other person
Yeah.
too, when they're just like, well,
Yeah.
I don't understand why. Why don't you tell me? It just doesn't work for
Hmm.
me.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I love this conversation so much because it is, I feel like when women hear these things,
Mm.
they might not be there yet to apply all of it, but to
Yeah.
just start to get curious, like we were talking about. And even going back to your body scans, like being able to check yourself and go, take a moment to even be able to close your eyes, breathe,
Yeah.
really breathe, and be able to check into your body and be able to, and I love, we'll definitely put that book in the show notes. I would love to recommend that as well. But even if you don't know about that yet, but just to even be able to feel where you're feeling, get curious about that and giving yourself that gentleness, giving
Yeah.
ourselves grace. I feel like it's so hard for women to do that sometimes. And
Well,
it's a
and no,
process.
because we have people in our head, right? We have
Yeah.
our critical parent, and it's not our parents, but we're parenting
Right.
ourselves. And anytime I hear people say, I should have done this, I'm like, according to whom? Right? Because so many times we interplay what we think are expectations from other people. I had a client one time that had gotten married, and she's like, oh, I have to be home by 6 o'clock because I have to have dinner on the table. And I'm like, does he expect you to have dinner on the table every night? Well, no, but I need to, that's what a good wife does. I'm like, okay, it might warrant a conversation because maybe he
Right.
likes to cook too, and like you're taking that away from him,
Yeah.
and so we just are so ingrained sometimes and we go through the motions because we haven't stopped, we haven't, how do I say this? Like sometimes the hamster wheel, like we move and move and move, but we don't move forward.
Right.
And we're so busy. I was
We're
at a
in that
conference.
loop. Yeah.
Yeah. I was at a conference one time. I was a youth pastor for 10 years while I was an executive at Citibank. And I was volunteer because you can get away with a whole lot more when they're not paying your salary. And I went to this thing, and this ex-football player got up and was talking about how busy stood for burdened under Satan's yoke.
Love
And that
it.
has stuck with me, regardless of what people's belief system is, right? In the fact that
Yeah.
when you're just busy, you're just kind of going through the motions. And that doesn't bring me any energy when I get into that.
Totally.
And at the same time, Noelle, part of that exhaustion that happens is
Hmm.
we haven't listened to our own universal law of rhythm and set up some structure, which is the masculine energy,
Hmm.
to then support the feminine energy of flow and creativity and like being present, right? So
Oh,
when
that's so good.
you have to have some of that structure. I mean, I don't love having a color coded calendar. My preference is to be open to possibilities. But in
Right.
order to be open to possibilities, I have to have some
Yeah.
structure built in. Otherwise, I, it stresses me out more and I get more exhausted when I don't have some structure set to,
True.
and that's just one example.
No, that's so true. As a matter of fact, I mean, that's part of why even my marriage works so well is
Yeah.
I'm with someone who very much, and we both say we learn from each other because he said he's very structured. He likes the color coded calendar. He likes things a certain way. I'm the open and free. Let's just go,
Yeah.
But he said, you've helped me to see the beauty in that and to help me get comfortable in that, non-structured space. But I also go, you have no idea. I think on the podcast, we were even talking about our closets and we were talking about, I mean, when I was a single mom, laundry was my biggest enemy. I was great at putting it in and putting it in the dryer. It was just taking it out and folding it and putting it away. It
Yeah.
just didn't always happen on a very structured rhythm at all. So my room had the piles of the clothes
Yeah.
on my chair. And now I've just learned how to take care of that in a reasonable manner. And I go, honey, it is such a different feeling when I wake up in the morning and my brain doesn't immediately see that pile of like, oh gosh, I've got that to do, because then it would take away my creativity. It would
Yep.
create this tension. The cortisol levels are going up because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's another thing I have to do. Whereas now I've been able to learn how to live in that freedom of creativity, but also having the structure, which
Yeah.
has, I feel like, has been a complete game changer in my life.
Noelle, you bring up something that really hit me too, because one of the things that I would recommend to people is if you are feeling exhausted, not only because you're leveling up and your nervous system is catching up to that belief and that belief system that you
Yeah.
have that you can be that level of your
Hmm.
favorite self, it's really about like everybody that's listening, I'd love for you to do a little test. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, well, when you go to bed tonight,
Yeah.
like look around your bed.
Hmm.
Do the same thing in the morning when you get up. I used to have a stack of books on my nightside table.
Hmm.
And every night when I went to bed, I'm like, oh crap, I still haven't finished all those books, right? And I always add to them, so it's never done.
Of course.
And then the next morning I'd get up and that's the first thing I saw. So immediately I'm lowering my vibration because of the environment around me.
So
So
good.
if you have clutter, you're not making space. If you have your office in your bedroom, get a partition or something that shuts it off, right? Like so that
Totally.
you have that space so that the first thing you see and the last thing you see before you go to bed is comforting. And
Hmm.
because that is part of the exhaustion too, is then you don't sleep very well because you're processing lower
So good.
vibration.
Yeah, it's just all of, that's the thing. It's just, it's not that it's hard to do. I mean, making these changes, it wasn't hard, but it was also figuring out, it was kind of getting out of my own way,
Yeah.
figuring out that it really made a difference too. Believing it, creating that proof for myself that this really does make a difference. I feel like
Yeah.
I always used to say, it's funny because before I got into any of this type of work, I remember always saying, I like when people would do personality types or, say who, what they thought you were, I would always say, but inside I feel, even though my life doesn't look like I'm a perfectionist, inside I feel like I'm a perfectionist. And so I always used to say, oh, I'm a wannabe perfectionist. I want to be, but I'm not. Like I still have the messy desk and I
Yeah.
still, but then I realized, oh no, it was all this subconscious level thinking and patterns that were in me that I go, oh, okay. It's so different when you start to recognize what actually feels good for us and who we are.
Yeah.
But until you get to that point, it's like this constant juggling of why am I not able to feel calm? Why am I
Yeah.
feeling like I want this, but I can't get it done? I can't do this. It's just this. And that's where this loop always happened for me. And I couldn't
Yeah.
get out of that.
And no, I think it's important to point out too, and not to do a sales pitch here, but I think it's important then to tap on people like yourself or myself, because sometimes you need an outside perspective because you don't see what
Yeah.
you don't see.
Yes.
And then once you become aware, you can't go back. And sometimes
So
people are
true.
afraid of that. But when you have somebody else in your corner that can help you see things in a different perspective and has a belief in you that you may not have in yourself, you can then
Hmm.
borrow that belief from them. And it makes all the difference in the world because
Yeah.
you don't feel like you're alone. I just did a little poll in my Build Her group on Facebook, and
Yeah.
that was the number one thing that people felt like got in their way is they felt like they had to hold everything. We don't.
Yeah.
But we have to allow people to come. We have to receive. And
Hmm.
many of us are afraid to say what we want, and then we're also afraid to receive something. And if you are afraid to receive something, think about the last time somebody tried to buy your coffee or your lunch, and did you argue with them? If you did, you have a hard time receiving.
Okay, let's talk about this receiving because this
Yeah.
is so good because that is so true. It goes with that example. I even think about women being able to, or just humans being
Mhm.
able to take a compliment and how we immediately make excuses for something. Oh, this whole thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel like again, it can become a very big deal for people to receive. So
Yeah.
my question in that is, why do you think receiving is often harder than being maybe the achiever or always wanting to achieve? What is it about that?
Because we're rewarded for achieving.
Mm,
right? We get the promotions, we get the pay raises, we get the accolades because we've achieved something. Growing
mm,
up, if I was part of a basketball team or a volleyball team that won, I got accolades. If I got good grades, I got to go pick whatever restaurant I wanted to go to, right? Like I was rewarded for achieving.
yeah.
So talking to someone that my value orientation is an achievement, it's a hard one to sometimes get over.
Right. Right.
Receiving in the past has always looked as weak, right? I remember I
Gosh.
was in
So
middle
true.
school and I remember saying to my youth pastor at the time that I couldn't go to Six Flags because we just didn't have the money at the time. And these two tickets showed up in my mailbox, had no idea where they came from. And when my mom found out I had told the youth pastor that, we stomped right back to the church and gave him right back to the youth pastor.
Mm,
Right. Now she grew up super poor. I'm talking one egg between four people, kind of poor, right? Poor farmers
yeah.
in Kansas. And so her messaging came forward with that. And so a lot of that messaging comes forward. And honestly, Noelle, like I love my faith, but in the church, I heard over and over and over again, love your neighbor at the expense of yourself.
Yep.
I mean, that's not the biblical. It's love your
Right.
neighbor as you love yourself. But I was told it's better to give than it is to receive. Now,
So
the first law
true.
of abundance is in giving you shall receive. But if you can't receive what's coming to you, how can you receive abundance? How can you receive love? How can you receive even self love?
Ah, so good. So
Like
good.
we just deflect it. And if you think
Yeah.
about giving a gift to someone,
Hmm.
like it hurts my feelings when someone argues with me about coffee. I'm like, you know
I
what?
offered
Step
for
back.
reasons. Yeah.
But see, we don't trust that we're telling the truth
Yeah.
because so many times, how are you today? I'm fine. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Right? Like even
Mm,
your husband in that conversation that you had.
right.
So we don't always trust that people are telling us the truth. So a
Hmm.
lot of times, and I do purposeful things. I now allow people to open the door for me because I used to, many of you probably, your husbands are trying to serve you and you push it away.
Right.
Right. My husband used to try to open the car door for me all the time. I'm like, would you just get in? It's cold. I lived in Kansas City, not, like it's cold. Get in the car
Right.
versus just receiving that.
Yeah.
So I allow people to open the door for me. When people buy my coffee or buy my lunch, I don't argue with them. I say, you know what, Noelle, thank you so much. That was not expected, but I very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because it allows me to say, you know what, I'm going to receive this gift. Because if I try to give a gift to someone and they push it back to me and give it back and say, no, thanks, I'm just looking, I'm going to be like, wait, I just like
Right.
wanted to give you a gift.
And we're taking that away from them. And that is the one thing that I have learned as well is we're taking that away from someone else that is wanting
Yeah.
to be able to give. And or maybe it's a thank you, whatever it
Yeah.
is, we take that away when we deflect it.
Totally.
And yeah.
And Noelle, it happens everywhere. I remember when my sister and brother-in-law, they were really big in what's called Young Life, and some people have probably heard of
Oh
that, and
yeah.
other people haven't. And
Hmm.
they had to fundraise to
Yeah.
get to go on this thing. And my parents were appalled
Mm.
that they had to fundraise to go to this camp versus
Yeah.
being, you know what? People want to give a gift. They want to help people. Now, I
Uh-huh.
watched my mom when she went through her breast cancer, like she then started to receive things, and that was a really big lesson for her to learn. But
Right.
we are taught all over the place not to receive. And so if people don't get anything else out of this podcast today, my hope is that they realize they need to get really clear on what you're available for and what you're not available for and be
Yeah.
open to receiving gifts that people are giving you. Like when I figure out my finances, I also have a column for where I've been gifted because
Mm.
that's abundance. And it's not just about currency, right? There's abundance
Yeah.
everywhere. Every time I
Exactly.
drive across the bridge where I live and I see two or three bald eagles or and the
Mhm.
sun hitting the snow on the mountain, it's like that just fills my heart with abundance. So look at ways to receive things, not just money, but like
Mhm.
receive love, receive the abundance that's out there in every way, shape, or form. And think
So
about
good.
who you hang out with. That's the last thing I want to say about this because
Yeah.
I'm really big on that too with relationship. I've been dealing and working with some clients that are having relationship issues. And I'm like, who do you hang around with? Are you hanging around with
Right.
women that bash their husbands?
Mm.
Because what you focus on gets bigger. So if I'm focused on all the negative things, that negativity piece and what I see the gaps in them are going to get bigger versus why did I fall in love with this person?
Right.
What's happening
So
in our
good.
life that's the good part? Because then you shift your energy and it's just quantum physics.
Yep.
They're going to shift too.
This is so good. Well, as we're going to wrap up, because I do have a little fun segment that I
Yeah.
would love to
Yeah.
do with you, but I do
Yeah.
want to ask you this one question.
Yeah.
What shifts When a woman stops proving and begins trusting herself, what starts to shift for her?
Oh no, well, I don't know if I can say it twice.
I know we have
Everything,
to, right?
right? Relationships shift. I've even seen it. I have a 33-year-old son. I had the best day I've had in a long time on Sunday because we spent the whole day doing things with his family, and that hadn't always happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I've shifted and as I've changed things, I've seen things shift in my son. And so everything shifts.
I love that.
Relationships, the relationship you have with yourself, but like the calmness that I have, I see things so much faster now. Like if I have a bump coming up and I feel my cortisol rise, I can already feel the chaos energy before it gets too high. So then I have tools, right?
Mhm.
So it's really hard to say one thing starts to shift
Yeah,
because everybody's trying to do a different type of shift. But
right.
I will say everything starts to move. I do ask my clients to note things. I have them practice gratitude because it
Yeah,
physiologically changes your brain.
100%.
But I also have people note things because a lot of times what happens is the slight incremental changes that occur, we don't notice those because we're looking for the Moses 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai movement,
Exactly.
right? So I ask them to jot down like how they're feeling, what shifted for them, even like one person came home from an event a while back and said, I got a hug from my husband. That was the first time that's happened, but she made the shift,
Hmm.
right? And so all those little things I ask them to write down so that they can go back and look and see how the shift has occurred for them.
I love that. And it is, and that's just another great point that I love that you're reinforcing here because we talk about it here on the podcast
Yeah.
is that whole idea of we're looking for the massive transformation, the massive shifts, whereas it's just all of those subtle things that'll start to add up, but it's
Yeah.
when we're noticing. And that's when, and it's just even those, the smallest things, just like what you were talking about for abundance. People equate abundance with wealth and money, but no, it can be seeing those eagles flying over. Like, that's abundance and recognizing what that means to each of us individually.
Yeah.
I
And
love
Noel,
that.
really quickly, if you think about
Yeah.
the Grand Canyon, right?
Mm,
Like the layers that you see sometimes in rock formations, that didn't
right.
happen overnight. It's
Yeah.
layers of stuff. So what do you want your layers to look like?
Yeah. Exactly. It's so good. And this is where, again, and I know we're not here to, make our pitches, but both of us being women that are working with people and really kind of and going through this journey because I always say, hey, I might be a couple steps ahead or I might see it from a different perspective due to training, whatever. But the bottom line is that this is a journey for me too. I am constantly evolving. I'm constantly adding another layer to my life. And but it that I feel like having women in my life, having mentors, having people that can help me that have a different perspective and can look in because maybe I'm too close to it.
Yeah.
And maybe even my family, yes, my mom is my best friend, but sometimes she's too close to it. It's
Yeah.
just like my own teenage son who yesterday I was having a conversation with him and he immediately called his older sister and said, yeah, because she said, did you talk to mom? And he goes, yeah, I talked to mom. He says, but she's my mom. And she had to say what she was going to say. Like, of
Yeah.
course I know she loves me,
Yeah.
And
Well, I
so
know,
it's that
well,
same idea, right?
I think a really important key component too, and it took me a while in my life to realize this, actually up until about 3 or 4 years ago, to realize that personal development, the intention is super important because
Mm.
so many people seek out medical advice, they seek out body workers, they seek out personal growth and development and coaches because they feel like something's wrong with them and they need to be fixed.
Oh,
And that is a lie. We were not
so
born with a tag that says, I'm screwed up, right? Like,
right.
and so coming with the intention of I want to grow and learn and be
Mm,
curious, that
I
is a
love
different
that.
vibration than I need to be
Totally.
fixed because I'm broken.
Oh,
Because
that
if
just
you
gave me the
believe,
chills. That just gave me the chills for real.
yeah, and if you believe
So,
God is always for you or the universe is always for you,
yeah.
you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed.
Yeah, no, that is so good. And to take that, just to, just taking almost that, because I feel like women, there's like a shame around it. And
Oh,
that's why they struggle with saying yes to it. And that is such a great way to look at that. I love that. And operating in a completely different frequency when
Yeah,
you're looking at the intention. Oh, that's so
absolutely.
good. So good.
Absolutely.
Debbie, you are brilliant. I just adore you, honestly.
Oh,
And
that gotcha.
I know that my wheels are already spinning. I wish we could be here for hours. We definitely need to plan a part two. But one of the things that we do around here, and I just love this because it gives a little insight into you, for our listeners, just a little bit more in a fun way. We do something called Spark and Spill.
Okay.
And really, it's just a fun little thing that I just ask a few questions and you can just answer from the top of your head.
Okay.
All right. So, what is something simple that brings you joy lately?
My dog,
Love it.
my
Uh,
male love interest with hair. That's who he is.
what did you say? I'm sorry.
I manifested a male love interest with hair.
I
Uh-huh.
love
And
it.
he's pretty stinking cute.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. Coffee, tea, or something else? And how do you take it?
Oh, I went to England in the fall and I've got a new appreciation for drinking Earl Grey tea. So that's my favorite tea, but definitely I'm a coffee girl and I take it with organic brown sugar almond milk made by
Yum.
Cathalia.
So, do
Yeah.
you like an afternoon cup of coffee?
No, if I drink afternoon, I'm
Is
up.
it okay? So I was curious because I'm like, some people I can handle it. My husband, if he has any caffeine past noon, he's like, I'm not going to sleep.
I can have caffeine, which is why I'll have like an Earl Grey tea. But if I drink coffee
Okay.
for some reason, after
It
about
just
3 o'clock,
okay.
I need to
Okay.
balance it out.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had a completely free day with no responsibilities, how would you spend it?
Two things. I would spend it with my son and daughter-in-law and two grandsons, and I would ski. Actually, my perfect day before I had grandchildren used to be my best friend owns a sailboat here on the lake
Oh,
that we live on. So I would ski in the morning and come down and we would go sail in the afternoon. That's like my
okay.
perfect day.
Stop. That's a dream. That is a
They
perfect day.
they now spend winters in North Carolina, so I don't get to do that.
Oh, that is so funny. Okay. A book or message that has deeply impacted you.
A book or message. Wow. So I would say there is a book that I read a long time ago, and now I can't remember the name of it. Shoot. Okay, well, I'm going to say one that I think all of your readers would love too. It's called The Year of Yes, and
Mm,
it's by Shonda Rhimes. And it talks to that whole idea of say yes to what you want to say, which is the universal law of sacrifice, and say no to what you don't want. Yeah.
okay, love
Yeah.
it. And last one,
Yeah.
one word that describes the season that you're in right now.
Sovereign,
Mm,
like owning my sovereignty.
love it, love it. Oh, thank you so much, Debbie. This has just been such a great conversation, and I would love for you to share where people can connect with you and learn more about your work.
Yeah, thank you, Noelle. You can go out to my website. It's thelituplife.com. Lit is Lit, uplife.com. And I have a free group called Build Her out in Facebook. So
Yeah.
feel free to go out and request to join that. We have some networking and teaching calls. I have different things that we post, and there's training that's dropped every month. And that's just kind of a good way for people to get a taste. That and my podcast, which we might have to have you on my podcast called The Lit Up Life. So
Yeah, definitely tune in. We'll make sure that we have all of that in the show notes so that way everyone can find you. And I just want to say thank you for being here and for sharing your perspective because I already know that this conversation is going to give so many people something to reflect on. And you even gave us such great tidbits, little tools. I love that. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, take what feels really supportive and just let the rest unfold at your own timing. But I would just love for you, and you can always go back and listen. That's always a thing too. So thank you for being here with us. And again, everyone, keep rising, keep shining, and know your best day is right here waiting for you. Bye, guys. Thanks, Debbie.
thank you.
Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my friends.